Welcome to the Workshop Recorder. My name is Scott. I want to talk about a basic. This is just a basic that a lot of modelers say, you don't need to prime. What is primer good for? Primer is a good practice for a number of reasons. Paint adhesion being one of them. A lot of guys say, well, I never had any trouble just spraying directly on plastic. Neither did I for a long time. But I've learned some lessons about primer. It's become very handy. And if you're spraying MRP, for example, that's what I spray this MRP lacquer. Great paint, super paint. I've got a ton of this stuff and I love to spray it, but it requires primer, otherwise it lifts right up off bare plastic. Primer has another function. When you build a kit, I've been working on this Caudron Guilin, little French transport airliner, nice little airplane. But man, I've been working on this thing for a while. I got some primer on it tonight, and the reason I put primer on here, not only for a good surface, but to check my work. When we were kids in school, we were told in math class, always check your work and make sure you're doing it right. I want my seams to be perfect because I'm filling seams and working hard to get a nice smooth, I don't want any cracks, any splits, any seams showing. And I'm going to be putting a silver finish on this, a dope finish and an aluminum finish in some areas. And that metallic really shows off your poor seam work. And so, it's hard to see. I polish up the plastic and I've got all kinds of different colors and dirt and grunge and grime in there from just handling the thing and working with it. So when I put the primer on there, it gives me a nice smooth monochrome finish and I can see my mistakes. And I found a lot of them. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is my Caudron Guilin. I just put some primer on it so I could check my build. And you'll see, let me get my pointer here. You'll see right in here, I've got a gap that I didn't see. I've got some stuff right along here that needs to be cleaned up. And this seam along the top has given me all kinds of trouble. And if you look closely, you can see right along that center line, there's a gap. Now this seam has been filled and polished about 5 times and there's still a gap there. This is going to be a silver finish. And so I've got to get everything just perfect here. You'll see that in this, right inside this scoop, there's some stuff in there. That's got to come out. And all along this aircraft now, I can see better, especially along that cockpit, I can see better where my aircraft needs attention, where my modeling skills are not up to par yet. And that's what primer does. It helps you to see all this stuff. Now you can see the wing root looks good. It's nice and smooth. The leading edge, no problems there. I've got some panel lines here on the top that probably need to be cleaned out. You can see they're a little rough there. And dust here and there. You can see that on that trailing edge of that wing. There's a piece of dust there. All this stuff needs to be dealt with. You can really see that, that split along the top there when I hold it up in the light. That confounds me. Well, also on the underside, this is another split that I knew I was going to have to deal with, but you can see it there. And there's a stress fracture right along that fuselage side. And I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's just brittle plastic. Maybe I've been manhandling it too much, but that's a stress fracture and I'm going to have to deal with that as well. And so you can see along the rear end of that nacelle, there's a little bit of split. So that's what filling and then priming does, because these are not acceptable gaps. These are hard to see when you've got shiny polished plastic, but you put primer on it and you can see them. You can see where there's one there I gotta deal with. So that's a benefit, and that's why we prime. That's just part of the process. Is you go over your aircraft with primer. Oh, I knew this was going to be a problem, but look along here, right in there. All that's going to need to be dealt with. But yeah, that's the benefit of priming. You know, some guys might get frustrated and give up and say, you know, I can't get this right. I just can't do it. But that's why we prime, and that's you fix it, you get it done. So the way I'm going to address this, I'm going to take some Mr. Surfacer, take some Mr. Finishing Surfacer in black. I'm going to mix them together here so I'll have a little bit of darker shade. That way when I go over my kit, there's so many little spots I got to address. I don't want to forget any of them, and I want them to stand out a bit. And so I'll have a darker gray here, and I'll mix that up in that little cup there. I'll apply it with a fine brush to my seams and all my little areas that need attention. and I'll be able to come back over those and catch them all. I won't forget them. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll stir that up and start putting some primer and some filler in my little cracks. So there you go. You can see I know all the areas that I need to address, especially down here on the bottom. I've got quite a few that need to be touched up. All right, so I've waited a while for that filler to set in that on that Guilin, on that model, and we're ready to sand it down and see how it worked. See if our little attention to these cracks and seams did any good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to polish them down. I'll show you a little bit about that, but I'll polish the majority of it down, and then I'll come back and show you what we got, and then we'll put some primer on it and see if it worked. Let's do that. This area that you saw in the video had some holes in it that needed to be dealt with, and I filled those. You can see where your work was, where you needed to fill, because I've used the darker color. On the back side, I've gone and filled that big crack and that stress fracture there, and I've put little spots here where I needed some filler and filled those in. And so you can see it's nice and smooth now. I don't feel anything running across there, but I'll prime that again, and once I prime that, it will tell me if my filling and my repair has been true. So that's what you do, and that's why I use the darker color, so I don't forget any of the places where I've filled. It's real easy to miss something like this or something like that, because you know you're working on bigger things like a big gouge down the middle of your aircraft. Well, I didn't want to miss it, so I made it stand out. So what I'll do now is I'll finish. I use these sanding sponges, and these older ones that are all cracked and worn are about a grade less than original, and I use them and come in here and I polish down all this area really well, and I work it until it's smooth, and then I'll come back and actually, if it's a metal finish like this one's going to be, I'll actually polish it with Tamiya compound if I need to. So for the sake of trying to show you, you can see that seam has been polished over, and as the light shines on it, you can see that there's probably not any further gap in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over this, and I'm going to put over this seam some more primer. All right, so let's take care of that and see how it works. Let's put some primer over that. Yeah, that's all we needed was another bit of attention with some filler. Now what we have in there is no gap. Now I'm not going to prime some of these other areas that I haven't really. Let's take care of this one. See what we got here. I had some waviness going on here. It's looking better. Probably a little bit of attention there. Probably won't have to put any more filler in there, but that's what we're talking about. So let's see how this one looks down here. I got to be careful. I haven't masked my little headlight up at the front there yet. I actually forgot about it until I started priming, so I had to work around it. So I don't want to go all the way up there. Now down here, we've at least closed up the gaps. Let's see, how do we look? A little heavier coat on there. I see a ridge, but I don't see a gap. So we're making progress. But you see, I would not have known that unless I prime. And so primer helps us drying in the airbrush a little bit because I don't have it mixed right. So what we're getting now are these gaps and seams are dealt with. So you can see that's how it works. All right, well, there we go. We have our seams dealt with. We've checked them with primer. We've put a darker colored primer filler over our mistakes. sanded those down, and covered that with another layer of primer, another gray primer, to check our work and make sure that our second round has dealt with the problems. Now, what I'll do is I'll take a gun cleaning patch, one of these gun cleaning patches, and I'll just buff that seam out, and what that'll do is put a slight sheen on there. I don't have to get out the polishing compound. I don't have to get out any kind of special tools. This is, I have them on hand. They're good. You can use toilet paper, rough toilet paper, cheap toilet paper, but it leaves lint behind. But it's also of a proper grit or abrasiveness that it'll polish this primer up a little bit. Also, typing paper will work, plain old typing paper. And I just give it a quick polish, and then I can look and see. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there's not any seam there anymore. There might be a slight bit, if I can get it to focus, there might be a slight bit in between those two holes that I've drilled there for antenna and aerials. But for the most part, what you're seeing is differences in sheen because I've been polishing. Once I come and really polish this up, I think that I've dealt with my seams. But it's the polishing that will really reveal that. The primer shows you your errors, and well, that's how we do it. That is a basic skill that will elevate your modeling from beginner modeling to something a little more satisfying, a little more professional, something that you will be more proud of. So thanks for joining me on my first how-to video. Hopefully it was helpful. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you do, what you think I should have done, or where I have used tools or things that you would do different. And always like when you subscribe. That'll help me to be encouraged to do more videos. And I'm grateful that you stopped by. Take care.